So hey guys, welcome to another video of this YouTube channel Elementary Physics, and here in this video we are going to discuss about the motion of a charged particle in an uniform electric and magnetic field. So let's get into our index. So our index here, first we are going to discuss about some preliminary topics regarding this particular topic, basically the forces due to forces acting on a electric charge due to electric and magnetic field. And next we are going to discuss about the Lorentz force, the motion of a charged particle in a uniform electric field, the motion of a charged particle in a magnetic field, and the motion of a charged particle in a cross electric and magnetic field. So let's get started. So here in our introduction, the electrostatic is a branch of physics which deals with the behavior of electric charges. Now at first, we have to know the force on a charge due to an electric field. According to Coulomb's law, let's take these two are charges. This one is positive, we named it as Q1, and this one is negative, we named it as Q2. And the distance between them is R vector. So, okay. So if two charges are placed at a distance R, then according to Coulomb's law, the force of attractive or maybe repulsive force is defined as F vector is equal to F vector is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 Q2 by R square into R cap, where epsilon naught is basically the free space permittivity, where the force is directed towards the center of one charge to another. Here R cap is along the direction from Q1 to Q2, and epsilon naught is the free space permittivity. Okay, now here there is a choice of R cap. You can choose it as from Q2 to Q1 or from Q1 to Q2, whatever you want. So in my case, as I am going to discuss about the force acting on the charge Q2 due to the charge Q1 placed at a distance R, so that's why I choose R cap as a unit vector along Q1 to Q2 direction. Okay, so now the electric field due to the charge Q1 at a distance R is defined as E1 vector is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 R square R cap. Okay, so R cap is the direction from Q1 to Q2. Okay, so now by comparing equation 1 and equation 2, we get that F vector equal to Q2 E1 vector. Okay, so let's you can see that E1 vector is basically equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 R square by R cap into R cap. And if you really compare these two equations, that you can see that this particular, except the Q1 term, this total suggests E1 vector, which is E1 vector, which is the electric field due to the charge Q1 at a distance R. Okay, so I can write it F vector as a electric field created due to the charge Q1 and into the charge Q2. So this will be the force due to the electric field of charge Q1 to a charge Q2, which is the force acting on the charge Q2 due to the electric field producing by the charge Q1 at a distance R vector. This suggests that a charge Q will experience a force F equal to Q into E if it is subjected to a electric field. So this is basically the amount of force. In case of magnetic field, the force acting on a charged particle of charge Q moving with velocity v in a uniform magnetic field is basically equal to F vector equal to VQ into V cross B, where B is the magnetic field and V vector suggests the velocity vector of the charge. Okay, now from this equation, if I take three-dimensional Cartesian coordinates and named it as Z, Y, and X. So if this red arrow suggests the direction of the V vector or the magnetic field vector, and yellow arrow suggests the direction of the velocity of the charged particle, and if the angle between them is theta, then the plane containing these two vectors, v vector and b vector, will be perpendicular to the force vector. Okay, as v cross b suggests that the force vector will be always perpendicular to the plane which contains vector v and vector b. We get that the force will be acted along the direction normal or perpendicular to the plane that contains the vector b and vector b. So this is the amount of force that a charged particle experiences moving in an electric and magnetic field. Okay. Now Lorentz force. Now as we all know the effects of electric and magnetic field on a moving charge, then we can discuss now the total force acting on a charged particle moving in an uniform electric and magnetic field. Basically, here we are going to be talking about the cross electric and magnetic field. Means the electric and magnetic field are directed along perpendicular directions from each other, okay, which is called the Lorentz force. The Lorentz force is defined as F vector equal to QE vector plus Q V cross B vector. Okay, as I told you earlier that a charged particle of charge amount of charge Q will experience a force of QE when it is subjected to a electric field E vector, and will experience a force QV cross B when it is subjected to a magnetic field and moving with a velocity vector V. Okay, where Q is the amount of charge of the charged particle, V is the velocity, and B is the applied magnetic field, and E is the applied electric field. Okay, so this is basically what we call the Lorentz force. So now motion of a charged particle in an uniform electric field. Suppose a particle charged q and mass m enters in an uniform electric field along direction of the y-axis. Let's take these two. This is the origin, and this is the y-axis, and this is the x-axis. And the red arrow shows the direction of the applied electric field. Okay, and it is directed along the z cap direction. J cap is the unit vector along y-axis, and this yellow arrow suggests that the velocity vector of the particle. Okay, so from the above description, it is clear that E vector is basically equal to E j cap, as I told you, and V vector has both components, Vx I cap, which is along the x direction, and Vy, which is along the y direction, Vy j cap. So that the equation of motion of the particle in the electric field is F equal to Q into E, as the amount of force will be experienced by the particle will be F equal to Q into E vector. Now if A be the acceleration of a particle due to the force acting along j cap direction, then from the Newton's law of motion we all know that F equal to ma, where m is the mass of the particle and a is the acceleration of the particle. And from that we get, if we really compare these two equations, I am just putting the value of ma here, and we get at ma vector equal to q e vector, or by simplifying it we get a vector, the acceleration vector, is basically equal to q e vector by m. So along x direction there is no force acting on the particle, then the distance covered by the particle along x direction within time t with a velocity component along x direction is vx is basically equal to x equal to vx into t. Now x is basically the distance covered by the particle within time t, and as there is no force acted upon the particle along the x direction, so it will not experience any kind of force, and it will not be accelerated. So the motion will be uniform along x direction. So that's why the distance covered by the particle will be like this, x equal to vx into t, where x is the distance covered and velocity is vx, and the time lapsed is t. So from this we get that t is equal to x by vx. Okay, now along y direction the particle experiences a force due to the electric field and get accelerated. A vector is equal to qe by m. The initial velocity component of the particle along y direction is vy, so the distance covered along y direction due to the acceleration within time t will be y equal to vy into t plus half of a t square, where y is the distance covered by the particle along y direction within time t, and as it has an acceleration along the y direction, so the equation will be changed, and now it is like y is equal to vyt plus half of at square, where a is the acceleration. And by putting the value of a from the previous equation, we get y is equal to vy into t plus half of qe by m into t squared. Now by putting the value of t we get from the previous equation, t is equal to x by vx, we get I'm just now putting the value of t in this equation. We get vy is equal to y is equal to vy into x by vx and plus half of qe by m x by vx its whole square. So as you can see, this equation suggests that the distance covered by the particle along y direction is proportional to the square of the distance covered by the particle along x direction. So y is basically proportional to x squared. Now from the proportionality, y is proportional to x squared, it suggests that the path of the particle will be a parabola whose vertex and focus will be along the y direction, y axis. As you all know from the equation of a parabola, that if let's take this is y axis and this is x axis, so the equation of a parabola x square is equal to 4ay, where a is the vertex of the parabola, suggests that a curve like this. Okay, so this is a parabola which vertex is along the y direction. This is called the vertex a. It's okay. So the motion of the particle will be like this. Now the particle will enter along x direction, means there is no component of the velocity along y direction. Let's take the velocity component vy is basically equal to 0. So the particle is purely has a velocity component along x direction. So as vi is equal to vy is equal to 0, so by putting vi equal to 0 from the previous equation, we get y equal to half of qe by m x by vx whole square, and the motion of the particle will be like this. If this is the origin and this is y axis and x axis, if the electric field is directed along this y cap direction and the particle is entered along x direction, so the motion of the particle will be like this. It will be in a locus, the locus of the path of the particle will be like this, the locus of a parabola. Okay, so as the diagram suggests, the motion will be along a locus of a parabola having its vertex along y direction. Now motion of a charged particle in a uniform magnetic field. Suppose a particle of charge q and mass m enters with a velocity v vector into a region of uniform magnetic field b vector. Now the force acting on the particle will be F equal to q v cross b, and the force can also be written in terms of the mass and velocity. F is equal to m dv dt. As you all know, dv dt is basically the rate of change of velocity with respect to time, which is none other than the acceleration of the particle. So from Newton's law, I'm just writing F equal to ma, where a is basically equal to dv dt, the rate of change of velocity with respect to time. Okay, the equation of motion of the particle will be m dv dt equal to q v cross b. I'm just equating these two equations, and assuming that v vector, the magnetic field, is directed along the k cap direction, means along the z axis direction, and the velocity has components along all three directions. So v vector is equal to vx I cap plus vy j cap plus vz k cap. Then by differentiating it with respect to t, we get dvx dt I cap plus dvi dt j cap plus dvz dt k cap. And now we have to find the value of v cross b. Okay, now just by putting the values of v cross b in this determinant form, I cap j cap k cap, as v has the all components along all the directions, so I write it each component at its position, and as the b vector, the magnetic field has only direction along the k cap direction along z axis, so I'm writing the value of the magnitude of the magnetic field along only the k cap direction. So by simplifying it, we get I cap b vy plus j cap minus b vx plus k cap into 0. Now we're writing the equation of motion in terms of these equations, we get m dvx dt I cap plus dvy dt j cap plus dvz dt k cap is equal to q I cap b vy I cap b vy plus j minus b vx plus k into 0. Okay, now by comparing both sides we get three equations. Now by comparing means here I am comparing the coefficients of each position vectors, basically not the positions vectors, each unit vectors along any axis, just like this. Let's take here the coefficient of the I cap vector, the unit vector along x direction is m dvdx dvx dt, and here it has a coefficient of q b vy. So I am just equating these two and we get m dvx dt is equal to q b vy, and the same case for j cap, we get m dvy dt is equal to minus q b vx, and dvz dt has no component here, so dvz dt is equal to 0. So m dvz dt is equal to 0. By solving this equation, we get dvz dt is equal to 0 and vz equal to constant. As you all know, the differentiation of a constant is always equal to 0. So by integrating it, we get the vz, which is a constant, and we named it as v parallel, as vz component of the velocity is along the direction of k cap, and as the magnetic field is altered directed along k cap, so this is basically the parallel to the magnetic field, so I write it as v parallel. Thus the velocity component parallel to v remains constant. Now as vz is equal to dz dt, basically the velocity is basically equal to the rate of change of displacement, okay, and z along z axis, and hence dz dt is equal to v parallel. To find z, we have to integrate it again. Dz dt is equal to v parallel, dz equal to v parallel dt, and by integrating it we get v parallel dt plus c, where c is a constant, and z equal to v parallel into t plus c, where c is a constant. Now to find c, we have to use the initial conditions, like if z equal to z naught at t equal to 0, so when it means that when the time is equal to 0, the distance covered by the particle is z naught. So from this we get that z equal to v parallel into t plus z naught. Now from equation 3 and 4 we get dvy dt is equal to qb by m, and dvx dt is equal to qb by m into vy, and dvy dt is equal to minus qb by m into vx. Now let's write qb by m as omega, called the cyclotron frequency, and by combining these two above equations we get ddt of vx plus j vy minus j omega equal to minus j omega vx plus j vy, where basically j is basically equal to the complex number root over of minus 1, and if you really solve these two equations, you will get these two equations by comparing the real and the imaginary terms. So I am going to leave it for you as a homework, so you can check it that these two equations are like this equation is basically the combination of these two equations. You just have to equate the real part and the imaginary part, and you will get these two equations. So to solve above equation, let's take vx plus j vy is equal to a, where j is equal to root over minus 1, and so by putting the vx plus j vy as a, dA dt is equal to minus j omega a, and dA by a is equal to minus j omega dt. Now by integrating it we get integration dA by a is equal to minus j omega dt plus c prime, where c prime is a constant, and ln a. So by integration of this, dA by a is basically equal to the ln of a minus j omega t plus ln c double prime, where ln c double prime is another constant which is equal to c prime, and a is equal to minus c double prime e to the power minus j omega t. Okay, so I get this equation from this equation just by omitting or taking the antilog of this equation. Okay, so vx plus j vy is equal to e to the c double prime e to the power minus j omega t, and as vx is the distance covered along x direction with respect to t, and vy is the rate of change of displacement along y direction with respect to t. So I can write it vx and vy as dx dt plus j dy dt is equal to c double prime e to the power minus j omega t. ddt of x plus jy is equal to c double prime e to the power minus j omega t, and by integrating this equation again we get x plus jy is equal to c double prime e to the power minus j omega t by minus j omega plus a constant c1, or x plus jy is equal to c double prime e to the power minus j omega t by minus j omega plus c1, and x plus jy is equal to c2 e to the power minus j omega t plus c1, where I named this new constant c2 is basically equal to c double prime by root over of minus j omega, where c1 and c2 are two constants and will be determined from the initial equation, initial conditions. Now let's take c2 is as a e to the power minus j alpha and c1 as x naught plus j y naught. As you can see, c2 is purely a kind of wave equation where a suggests the amplitude of the wave and alpha suggests the phase of the wave. Okay, and c1 is basically equal to x naught plus j y naught. Then x plus jy, just putting the value of c2 here, we get a e to the power minus j alpha e to the power minus j omega t, plus just putting the value of c1, we get x naught plus j y naught. Now as we all know, e to the power minus j theta is equal to cos theta plus minus j sin theta, and e to the minus j omega t plus alpha will be cos omega t plus alpha minus j sin omega t plus alpha. So the equation will be x plus jy is equal to a cos omega t plus alpha minus j sin omega t plus alpha plus x naught plus j y naught, and by taking the real and the complex part, x plus jy equal to a cos omega t plus alpha plus x naught, which is the real part, and j into y minus a sin omega t plus alpha plus y naught is the imaginary part. And now by equating or by comparing the both sides of the equation, from the real part we get x equal to a cos omega t plus alpha plus x naught, and from the imaginary part we get y equal to minus a sin omega t plus alpha plus y naught. And by simplifying these two equations, we get x minus x naught equal to a cos omega t plus alpha, and y minus y naught is equal to minus a sin omega t plus alpha. X minus x naught is equal to a cos omega t plus alpha, and y minus y naught equal to minus a sin omega t plus alpha. Now by squaring and adding above the equations, we get x minus x naught whole square is plus y minus y naught whole square is equal to a cos omega t plus alpha whole square plus minus a sin omega t plus alpha whole square. And from this we get x minus x naught whole square plus y minus y naught whole square equal to a square. And this suggests the locus of a circle, okay, whose center is basically at x naught and y naught, and a is basically its radius. Okay, now we are going to discuss above problem in two cases. Let's take first case. As the velocity component of the particle along z axis is 0, let's take v parallel is 0, so there is no velocity component along z direction. Then the particle will describe a circular path in the plane perpendicular to b vector. In this case, in the xy plane, the radius of the circle will be given by v perpendicular square is equal to x dot square plus y dot square is equal to a square omega square, where or a is equal to v perpendicular by omega, or v perpendicular into m by qb. It is known as the radius of gyration. The motion of the particle will be like this. Let's take these three are the Cartesian coordinates, and the green arrow suggests the motion of the or the direction of the magnetic field, which is along k cap direction. And if the particle enters to perpendicular to the magnetic field, we get that the particle will be rotated in a circular path. Okay, and thus if a charged particle enters a uniform magnetic field normally describes a circular path, the radius r of the circular path can be easily determined by equating magnetic force to necessary centripetal force. It means that the magnetic force, which is qv cross b, provide the necessary centripetal force to the particle that rotates the particle in a circular motion. Okay, so by equating this, mv square by r is equal to qvb equal to r mv by qb. In this case, the momentum of the particle is given by p is equal to mv equal to qbr, and the time period of revolution can be written as t is equal to 2 pi r by v is equal to 2 pi m by qb, is independent of the speed of the particle, and this fact is used in a particle accelerator called cyclotron. Case 2. The velocity component of the particle along z-axis is non-zero, so that v parallel is not equal to 0. The particle moves parallel to v vector with constant velocity speed v parallel, and at the same time gyrates about v vector. Therefore, the particle moves in a helix with k cap as the axis. So let's take again these three as the coordinate system, and the green arrow suggests the direction of the magnetic field. So the motion of the particle will be like this. It gyrates along the k cap direction and rotated in the basically the xy plane. So note the direction of the gyration will be such that the magnetic field generated by the moving charged particle is opposite to the external applied magnetic field. As you can see, the particle is moving in clockwise direction and gyrates about the k cap direction. So by the Fleming's right hand rule, it will suggest that a charged particle moving anticlockwise produce a magnetic field upward. So to oppose the applied magnetic field, the particle have to produce a magnetic field along the downward direction. So that's why the particle moving in a clockwise the motion and gyrates about the k cap direction. Now, motion of a charged particle in a cross electric and magnetic field. Now suppose a particle of charge q and mass m enters with a velocity v vector into a region of crossed E and B vector fields. Let B is along z axis and E is along y axis. The equation of motion of the particle is in such a field will be m dv dt is equal to qe plus v cross b. Let B vector is along k cap direction, so v k cap, and E vector is equal to E j cap, which is along the y cap direction or the y axis direction. Then v cross b will be b vy I cap minus b vx j cap. So the equation of motion will be m dvx dt I cap plus dvy dt j cap plus dvz dt k cap is equal to q E j cap plus b vy I cap minus b vx j cap. So the equation of motion will be m dvx dt I cap plus dvy dt j cap plus dvz dt k cap is equal to q E j cap plus b vy cap minus b vx j cap. By comparing both sides, again comparing means we are going to equate the coefficients of each of the unit vectors. Okay, so by equating the coefficients of unit vector I cap, we get m dvx dt is equal to qb vy, and by equating j cap we get m dvy dt is equal to qe minus b vx and dvz dt is equal to 0. Now suppose the charged particle is at rest at the origin at time t equal to 0, and we are to find the subsequent motion. In this case, this equation dvz dt is equal to 0 yields that vz is equal to z and z is always equal to 0. Okay, now from equation 13 we get m dvy dt is equal to q e minus b vx. So dvy dt is equal to q by m e minus b vx, or dvy dt is equal to ay minus omega vx, where ay is basically equal to qe by m and omega is as always equal to qb by m. Now by differentiating previous equation with respect to t, we get d2 vy dt square is equal to 0 minus omega dvx dt. d2 vy dt square is equal to minus omega square vy, as dvx dt is equal to qb by m into vy. I am just putting the value of this particular equation in this equation. And to solve this equation, let's take vi is equal to e to the power bt, where v is a constant. Now we have to solve this particular differential equation. So we are going to use this particular method to solve this kind of differential equation. Now by differentiating to t with respect to t, above equation we get dvi dt is equal to b to the power bt, and again differentiating with respect to t, we get d2 vy dt square is equal to b square to the power bt. Now putting these values on above equation, we get b square to the power bt minus omega equal to minus omega square to the power bt. This suggests b is equal to plus minus j omega, where j is the complex quantity to the power of minus 1. By putting the value of b in this equation, we get vy is equal to g e to the power j omega t plus h e to the power minus j omega t. Now by putting the value of b, we get vy is equal to g e to the power j omega t and h equal to e to the power minus j omega t. As you all know, e to the power j omega t is equal to cos omega t plus j sin omega t, and e to the power minus j omega t is equal to cos omega t minus j sin omega t. So by simplifying these two equations, we get vy is equal to g plus h cos omega t plus j into g minus h sin omega t. And let's take g plus h is another constant, so we can write it as a g prime, and h prime is equal to j into g minus h. So by simplifying it, we get vy is equal to g prime sin cos omega t plus h prime sin omega t. Now at t is equal to 0, Vy is equal to 0. Therefore, from above equation we get g prime cos 0 plus h prime sin 0 is equal to 0. And as we all know, sin 0 is 0 and cos 0 is 1. So this suggests that g prime is equal to 0. The solution will be Vy equal to h prime sin omega t. Now to find y, we have to integrate this equation Vy is equal to dy dt. Using this, we get dy dt is equal to h prime sin omega t. By integrating, we get integration dy is equal to integration h prime sin omega t dt plus I, where I is a integrating constant, y is equal to h prime minus cos omega t by omega plus I. Now to find I, let's take another initial condition. At t is equal to 0, y is equal to 0. So this means I is equal to h prime by omega. So by putting the value of I, we get y is equal to h prime by omega into 1 minus cos omega t. To find Vx, let's consider equation 12. M dvx dt is equal to qb Vy, or dvx dt is equal to omega Vy. Now by putting the value of Vy in the above equation, we get dvx dt is equal to omega h prime sin omega t. Now by integrating above equation, we get dvx equal to omega h prime sin omega t plus dt plus j, where j is another integrating constant. And so we get Vx is equal to omega h prime minus cos omega t by omega plus j. So again, by putting the initial conditions, we get at t is equal to 0, Vx equal to 0. So from this we get j is equal to h prime. So Vx equal to h prime into 1 minus cos omega t. To find the value of x, again we have to integrate it. So by integrating it, again we get x equal to h prime t minus sin omega t by omega plus k, where k is another integrating constant. So x is equal to h prime t minus sin omega t by omega plus k. To find k, let's take at t is equal to 0, x equal to 0. This suggests k is equal to 0. So that we get two equations, x equal to h prime t minus sin omega t by omega, and y is equal to h prime by omega 1 minus cos omega t. It suggests a motion of a cycloid. This is the path generated by a point on the rim of a wheel rolling along a line. So this is an example of a cycloid motion. As you can see here, this is a particular point which is stable in the, or basically glued in the rim of the circle, and when the circle rolls and get the motion along the x-axis, the motion of this particular point is like this. So this suggests, or this is basically the locus of a cycloid. So if this is the origin, and this takes these three as the three coordinate axis, and the green arrow suggests the direction of the magnetic field, and the red arrow suggests that the direction of the electric field. So the particle will be moved like this in the x-axis direction. So this is basically will be the motion of the particle along x-axis. So this is how the particle reacts when it is subjected to a uniform electric or uniform magnetic field, or in cross electric and magnetic field. Hope you all like this video. So forget not to subscribe my channel and hit the bell icon to get notified when I make any kind of video regarding physics. So hope you all enjoyed this topic. Thank you for watching.